Hello friends, I welcome you to the lecture number 24 of the course titled Psychology of Stress, Health and Well-being. So, today's lecture is lecture number 24 overall, but it is third lecture of module 8. So, today we will talk about the concept of sustainable happiness with intentional activities. So, before we talk about today's lecture, let me briefly give you a recap of the last lecture, that is lecture number 23. So, in the last lecture we have discussed a model called a sustainable happiness model proposed by Sonja Lyubomirsky and her colleagues. They proposed it in 2005. So, we discussed this model in the background of two lines of research. In one line of research shows that there are certain inherent barriers in our system for increasing happiness level. So, such as our genetic set point or our genetic composition and hedonic adaptation. So, these two are major barriers, which and genetic set point is also related to our personality traits. So, genetics, personality traits and hedonic adaptation, they are kind of acting as a barrier in increasing our sense of happiness or our experience of happiness. So, we are not able to sustainably maintain because of these factors our experiences of happiness level or subjective well-being. However, another line of research that showed that it is possible to increase our happiness level and maintain it sustainably in various intervention studies. So, in the background of these two line of research, we have discussed a model called sustainable happiness model, which talks about three important factors or determinants of happiness. These are genetic set point, life circumstances and intentional activities. So, this model propose about 50% is kind of contributed by genetics, or our emotional and happiness level is contributed by genetics. About 10% is contributed by our life circumstances and about remaining 40% is contributed by intentional activities. Although there are some criticism to these percentages, so these are not exact, should not be taken as an exact percentages, but these are more of an indicative percentages from the population that was taken. So, we have discussed these three determinants, and typically we discussed a genetic set point is basically about how our genes set certain limits and creates a baseline level of happiness. So, there are individual differences you might have seen that some people are generally more happier, some people are generally more emotionally in terms of sad, they remain most of the time. So, which could be contributed by our genetic composition. Then with the second factors are life circumstances are typically includes incidental, but relatively stable facts of our life, which could include the area or regions or the country or the geographical location of your residence or birthplace, demographic factors, your personal history, your life status variables such as marital status, your income, health, etc. So, all these are basically incidental, but these are mostly stable facts of our life, and research generally shows our life circumstances do not contribute to a very large extent to our happiness level, and most of the research shows this contribution of life circumstances in the variance of happiness in a population is range from 8 to 15%. So, it is not very strong predictor. One of the reason could be that we get adapted to life circumstances, even though some changes happens, but we then quickly adapt to them. Then the third set of factors that we have discussed are called intentional activities, are basically conscious activities that we do in our life, throughout our life, occasionally or on a daily basis. Various activities or practices that we do in terms of how we think and how we act. So, basically it was defined like how we act on our life circumstances are basically intentional activities is defined by that. So, then we have discussed the intentional activities can be of three types. One is behavioral activities, cognitive activities and volitional activities. And then basically we have discussed that despite the variants of genetics and hedonic adaptation, it is the intentional activities which gives a very significant and a logical route to increase our happiness level, because intentional activities are something it is in our control. Life circumstances, genetics are not mostly beyond our control. We cannot do much in terms of changing them, but intentional activities by definition are the activities that we choose to engage in, and we do consciously do them. So, we can control them. So, therefore, it is one of the important significant route or intervention where or possible intervention where we can change our happiness level and maintain it sustainably. So, today we will kind of carry on from that concept, and we will elaborate more on the concept of intentional activities, because it is important to understand it, because it is the main important determinant where we can really make changes, and and consequently we can sustainably increase our happiness level. Other factors like genetics and life circumstances are mostly beyond our control, and therefore, let us understand more about the concept of intentional activities in little bit more elaborate ways. So, today we will talk about intentional activities and how it is related to hedonic adaptation, and how to use intentional activities for increasing our happiness level, and then at the end we will talk about positive activity interventions. So, let us see. So, intentional activities as the basis of sustainable happiness. So, a sustainable happiness model which we have discussed in the last lecture indicates that intentional activities are offer the greatest they offer the greatest potential to sustainably increase happiness, simply because it is in our control. Other factors are not in our control, unlike genetics and circumstantial factor. So, intentional activities are generally, we have defined it in the last class also, and just to remind you, are effortful actions and practices that include variety of things people think and do. So, it includes both at your thinking level, it could be at the cognitive level, or it could be at the behavioral level. So, varieties of thinking processes and varieties of the actions that we do are included under intentional activities. So, when we are talking about intentional activities here, we are talking typically those activities which are significant in connection to increasing our happiness level. Intentional activities could be activities which may increase our suffering also, because there are many activities which may not be suitable for happiness, for increasing our subjective well-being or happiness. But here we are talking about specifically those activities which are significant for enhancing our happiness level or our well-being. So, intentional means effortful, or people choose to engage. So, these are effortful and people generally has a choice in it. So, for example, activities such as gratitude, optimistic thinking, pro-social behavior, these are some of the examples of intentional activities that can enhance our happiness level. We will talk more about specific activities such as gratitude, acts of kindness in the upcoming modules, where we will talk specific activities in more details. Here we are talking intentional activities collectively as a group of activities. So, one important question happens that generally it was found that people get adapted to life circumstances, even though there are changes, positive changes or negative changes, there is a very strong hedonic adaptation to life circumstances. Can hedonic adaptation also happen to intentional activities? No. If hedonic adaptation happens to intentional activities, then I mean it is not a very important or significant area where we can really use it to increase our happiness level. So, this is an important question, that what about hedonic adaptation of intentional activities? Do you also get adapted to intentional activities also? How are they different from life circumstances? So, as we have seen, life circumstances really do not contribute much to our happiness, primarily because we get adapted to them. So, do we also get adapted to intentional activities, activities that we consciously do and put effort to bring about certain activities in our life? Do we also get adapted to them? If so, then how they are different from life circumstances? Now, Sonja Lyubomirsky and her colleague in the 2005 paper where they discussed this model, they suggested that hedonic adaptation to some extent can happen to even intentional activities also, but the effect seems to be much weaker in case of intentional activities. So, hedonic adaptation is much weaker and the effect of hedonic adaptation is much less in case of intentional activities. So, what could be the reason behind it? Let us explore. So, what are there are two specific advantages of hedonic intentional activities, which makes it less resistant to which makes it more resistant to hedonic adaptation. So, because of these two important qualities, we are less likely to get adapted to intentional activities. One reason is that intentional activities are episodic in nature. What is the meaning of episodic in nature is that life circumstances, if you see, they are mostly kind of constant facts of your life. It is a kind of constant undercurrent or background in your life. It is always there. When something is constantly in your life, we generally get adapted to them, because for how much time you can really think about something which is constantly going on in your life. After some time, you simply get adapted and you do not think much about it. We get habituated to them. So, that is the meaning of adaptation. But in the case of intentional activities, they are generally episodic, because you are doing some activities, you cannot do it all the time. So, sometimes we do some activities and they have certain positive impact in our mind, or they enhances our sense of subjective well-being. So, generally they are transient and episodic. Sometimes we may do maybe once in a day, or maybe once in a week, or sometime, or some kind of activities which we do. For example, generally some people engage in the practice of cultivating gratitude, which basically means you express your sense of thankfulness to people. So, we do not do it all the time. Sometimes you may express your gratitude maybe once in a week, or sometimes in a certain period of your time when you encounter certain people. So, this episodic nature makes it less likely to get adapted to that. So, it is not a chronic or permanent aspect of one's life. When you are doing an effortful activity, it cannot be all the time, it has to be sometime only. So, people engages in them only in certain time, and therefore, we are less likely to adapt to a transient episodic activities. For example, experience or practice of gratitude sometimes. So, we may practice gratitude, but we cannot do it all the time, obviously. So, it is mostly an episodic thing that we do. So, we will talk about more about the practice part later. So, intentional activities are generally episodic, unlike life circumstances, which is a kind of constant background in your life. Second important characteristics of intentional activity is that it is varied in nature. So, in the sense that intentional activities are not that same thing you are doing all the time and every day, then we are likely to get adapted. So, generally we can change it because it is in our control. So, for example, by practicing gratitude, you can change the way you kind of express gratitude. Sometimes you can express gratitude by talking to someone directly and expressing your thankfulness for whatever positive things that person has brought into your life. You express your gratitude towards that person. Sometimes you may just write a letter of gratitude. Sometimes you may just text it. So, you can express your gratitude in varieties of ways. So, therefore, we are less likely to get adapted to them, because it is in our control. We need not do it in the same manner all the time. So, when something is varied, we are less likely to get adapted to them. When something is constant and same, then we are more likely to get adapted to them. So, this nature reduces adaptation, as we are less likely to adapt to a variable or changeable stimuli or activity. So, for example, we can vary ways of expressing gratitude, such as writing or speaking. So, because of these two important characteristics, we are less likely to get adapted to intentional activities. Therefore, it is very important and significant pathways by which we can increase our happiness level by practicing certain intentional activities in order to sustainably maintain our happiness level. So, how can we use intentional activities for increasing happiness? So, now you understand intentional activities are very significant for increasing happiness, but how can you use it? So, obviously, we will talk about specific activities later on. Now, we are talking about collectively about intentional activities as a group of activity. So, while we discuss specific activities, you will you will understand more about how to do one specific activity. Here see some of the general features. So, how can we use intentional activities for increasing our happiness level? So, if happiness is rooted in intentional activities, as a lot of research indicates, what activities should we do? What kind of things we do under intentional activities to enhance our happiness level? So, according to Sonja Lyubomirsky and her colleague in the same paper where they proposed their model, they propose that for the best result of any happiness intervention, diagnosis of person activity fitness is very essential. So, not all same activity cannot be beneficial for all people, because people differ in their temperament, in their values, in their belief system, in their motivation. So, individuals are different. So, we cannot subscribe just do one activity and it will be good for almost everybody. There may be some certain activities which could be beneficial for almost everybody, but most of the activities may not be suitable for everybody. So, people differ. So, this fitness between the person and the activity is very important, whether this activity is suitable for that person or not. Are they matching with each other, activity and the person? If it matches, then it will be the beneficial to that person. Otherwise, it may not bring about those positive changes as intended. So, any particular activity may not be suitable for all person. People have different strengths, interests, values that will predispose to benefit more from some activities than others. So, certain predisposition and personal characteristics are there that will determine which activity is suitable for one person and which activity is suitable for another person. For example, people who are very extrovert may benefit from outgoing activities and connecting with others as compared to an introvert. So, as we have discussed, extrovert is a personality characteristics, where people who are extrovert, basically they are very outgoing, very social, they are more lively and more gregarious in nature. They always like to be around people, they like to connect with people. So, people who are very extrovert, they may benefit from activities which is connected to social activities, or where they have the opportunity to connect with people. So, it could be any social activity, social welfare activities. Extroverts are more likely to be benefited from those activities as compared to an introvert who is not outgoing, who more prefers to live in his or her own personal world. Such people may benefit from other type of activities, which are maybe creative individual activities which they prefer. So, depending on the personal characteristics, certain activities can be suitable for some people and it may not be suitable for other people. So, this person activity fitness is very important. How can we do this person activity fitness? So, according to Lyubomirsky, she also kind of proposed certain ideas to how to do this fitness. While you understand how to find out which activities are suitable for you, you need to focus on these three important aspects. One is you need to find out fit with the source of your unhappiness. So, one thing is very important, people are unhappy for varieties of reasons. So, there can be hundreds and thousands of reasons for becoming unhappy. So, people really are diverse in terms of sources of unhappiness. So, one need to find out what is the source of your unhappiness, why you are unhappy for most of the time, or what is the major reason or main source for which you are kind of becoming unhappy for a lot of time, for most of the time. So, this self reflection is very important in order to find out which activity will be more beneficial for you to remove your unhappiness. Source of unhappiness you need to find out. So, here it is kind of very individual exercise, self reflective exercise, then one need to do. So, if you look deeply, you will find out what is the reason behind it. Sometimes the reason could be probably in something in your environment or in your in the social circumstances, but mostly the reason could be something in your mind. How do you look at the world? How do you process information? If you remember this ABC model, external circumstances, they do not really directly influence our emotions. It is our thought processes. How do you interpret an event? How do you take an attitude towards the circumstances? That plays very important role. So, find out what is the reason behind it. So, finding the source of unhappiness and matching it with the activity addresses the specific source. In that way, you can find the best activities for this. For example, a pessimist may benefit from cultivating optimism. So, some people are maybe their source of unhappiness could be most of the time they are thinking in a very pessimistic way. For whatever reason, they kind of get conditioned to think negatively, and most of the people, a lot of people are kind of we become very pessimistic very soon. Whenever something happens negatively, and automatically thought becomes very negative. So, possibly some people are much more pessimistic as compared to other people. So, if somebody is very pessimistic, so a lot of his unhappiness is connected to that pessimistic thinking. So, cultivating something like optimism could be very beneficial in that context to kind of eradicate the root of unhappiness. So, so because intentional activity like cultivating optimism will require efforts, it will not happen automatically. By definition, intentional activity means that. So, cultivating such thing requires certain efforts and motivation to kind of eradicate what is within you or some problems that are there. So, one thing is you need to find out the sources of unhappiness and match your activity with that source. That is one of the way to match it. Second is fit with your strengths. So, person activity fitness can be done by identifying strengths and talents. Another thing is that every individual has so many strengths and talents, everybody will have certain strengths and talents in their life, and you can use those talents. It is always better to use those strengths and talents more and more to increase our happiness level. And in order to do some intentional activities, you can use your strength and talent to express those intentional activities. So, that also enhances the effectiveness, because it is in line with your strengths, then you will be more happy in doing it, you will be more motivated in doing it. So, for example, a creative person may express love and gratitude through painting and writing. So, he is using his strength of creativity in terms of painting or writing and expressing certain intentional activities like expressing love and gratitude, which will stimulate positive emotions and happiness. So, his strength is also used, so he will be more motivated to do it. So, fitting with your strength is also very important. Then the last one is fit with your lifestyle. It is also important because you may not be able to do all kinds of activities simply because our lifestyle has certain constraints. If you have a very hectic schedule, you will not be able to find too much time to do lengthy things. So, depending on your lifestyle, you need to choose some activities. So, I am here mostly talking about activities in general, specific things we will talk later on. So, you can choose activities which require short duration of time. So, for example, it also depends on your orientation. For example, if somebody is very spiritual person or doing some spiritual exercises, then he may choose activities accordingly. For example, doing meditations and prayers could be beneficial for that kind of person, because his lifestyle is oriented towards spiritual things, spiritual pursuits. So, activities which are in line with that obviously will benefit him more and more, because it will fit with his lifestyle. such as doing meditation and prayers, etc. So, these are some of the ways by which you can do this person activity fitness to find out the best activity which promotes your happiness. Now, positive activity interventions. So, this is a term that is used for intentional activities, but intentional activities by the term itself may mean activities which may not be just for happiness. So, any activities it means. So, positive activity or activities are, this is the term that is used to mean only those activities which are conducive for enhancing happiness level or well-being. So, positive activities are basically simple, intentional, regular practices that mimic the healthy thoughts and behaviors associated with naturally happy people. So, these are the activities that research shows that are beneficial for enhancing happiness, and they mimic the thoughts and behaviors of naturally healthy people or naturally happy people. So, people who are naturally happy, so they are kind of this happy temperament is there. They show certain characteristics, and positive activities are basically kind of used to mimic that. For example, people who are naturally happy, they show more gratitude, they are generally more thankful towards life and people who contribute in their life. They show a lot of optimistic thinking, they also do a lot of pro-social behavior or helping behaviors. So, positive activities basically include this kind of behaviors which mimics the behaviors and thoughts of happy people and which promotes happiness in our life. So, let us see more about these positive activity interventions or some of the specific activities. So, there are varieties of positive activities. In terms of interventions, research have been done on varieties of positive activities or positive intentional activities for increasing well-being and happiness and reducing negative symptoms. So, a lot of research nowadays people are conducting in the area of positive psychology to understand the efficacy or implications of various positive activities and whether they really enhance happiness or not, or sustainably increase happiness or not. So, these are some of the examples of such activities. We will look more into each of these activities in the upcoming modules, but let us see what are some of these things. So, various randomized controlled intervention studies showed that, for example, these are examples of positive intentional activities or positive activities in general. Writing letters of gratitude. So, a lot of research shows that people if they are asked to write letters of gratitude to people for whom they are grateful for something, so that increases happiness level significantly to the people. So, letters of gratitude, basically expressing gratitude in general shows that people who express gratitude more to the people or to whatever life situations or in general maybe to the nature or God or whatever it is. So, the more we express gratitude, expression of gratitude immediately enhances our positive emotions, we become happier. So, in general if you see most of the time we are our mindset or human mindset is conditioned in such a way that we focus more on things that are negative or things that we complain about. So, our focus mostly goes on. So, 10 things may be good in your life, but one thing is wrong, your whole focus will go there, primarily because this is how our mind is conditioned. We will complaining about that one particular wrong thing that has happened in our life. So, if you keep on complaining and the moment you start complaining, the negative emotions comes and your happiness decreases. So, the expression of gratitude does the opposite of complaining. So, you just intentionally train your mind to look into things for which you should be grateful. So, life you may be grateful for so many things. So, it could be for people around you or who is supporting you, You may be grateful for various skills and abilities that you have. You may be grateful for the life situations that are given to you. No, you may get so many fortunate things in your life, in terms of money or in terms of materials, whatever it is. So there may be many things you can look at where you can be grateful, but we generally don't focus on the things for which we should be grateful. We focus more on things for which we should complain. So expressing gratitude is a part of this exercise, where you consciously shift, because that is intentional activity, means you need to put effort, because our mind naturally goes into complaining. So you need to shift it consciously. So you shift your attention to the things for which you should be grateful. The moment you look into those things, positive emotions comes and you become much more happier. And this happiness actually is significant, and if you keep on doing it, that it will be maintained. So writing letters of gratitude, a lot of research shows it could be writing letters, or it could be expressing directly to a person. All this actually enhances happiness level. These are research findings. Another activities which was found to be beneficial is counting one's blessing. So again, it is connected to gratitude actually. So counting one blessing is again, you see the things for which you think you are blessed in your life. So mostly the things for which you should be grateful for. So it is again a part of kind of gratitude exercise only. So as I have said, you can be feel blessed for so many things in your life. So especially in the crisis situation or difficult situations, counting one blessing could be an important strategy for coping also. And such interventions actually, research indicates people happiness level or positive emotions increases after doing such kind of activities. The next is practicing optimism. Is another thing. Optimism is basically, you look at the bright possibilities or positive possibilities in your life. So about particularly in the future events. So you always think that you hope for the best, that some positive outcomes are going to happen. So practicing optimism is also found to be very important for coping with various difficulties of life, and also making a sense of resilience, because the moment you lose hope and you become pessimistic, you will not have any energy and motivation to do anything. So becoming optimistic and cultivating that optimistic even in difficult situation is something very important that one can cultivate by practicing, and it has shown a lot of benefits in terms of increasing our sense of resilience, increasing happiness and positive emotions. The next is performing acts of kindness. Also research shows that the more you perform acts of kindness, the more you are likely to be happier. So kindness basically refers to any acts that you do or that is intended to benefit others. So it could be any kind of acts which you are basically your intention is to benefit someone else. So all these activities can be called as acts of kindness. So these acts of kindness is something, an universal virtue. If you go to any culture, acts of kindness will be kind of considered one of the highest virtue, and it is considered as the basis of our individual as well as collective happiness. Because if people become unkind in society, society as a whole will become very full of suffering and unhappiness. So kindness is so important, not only just for your individual happiness, but it is also important for your collective, for our collective, social or even global happiness. Without that, we will lose that cohesiveness or the connection with people. It is lack of kindness that is causing so much of destruction. So performing acts of kindness is very important, and acts of kindness need not be like should not be a great work of charity or something. It could be simple things, even if you smile at somebody, it will kind of induce some positivity to other person, or if you say a few words of encouragement, or if you say thank you to someone. These are also small acts, but these are all acts of kindness, because your intention is to benefit other person. So acts of kindness should not be looked at like grand acts of charity or something. It could be very simple thing that everybody can do. So, such simple acts of kindness also showed that the more people do them, their happiness also increases. Another thing is using one's strength in new ways. Everybody has a lot of signature strengths and talents that people may have. Sometimes people realize their strength and talents a little bit later in their life. Sometimes people realize them early in their life, but we all have different kinds of talents and strengths. So, when we are talking about strengths, it need not be just kind of mental strengths or abilities of mind or something. We could have becoming for example, somebody may have strength in terms of empathy or emotional connection with other people. So, strength could be of so many varieties of ways, need not be only intellectual kind of strength. So, if the more we use our strengths and talents, we are more likely to become happier, because if we have certain strength, the idea is that the moment we do that, it will enhance our happiness, because we are good at it. It increases our sense of competence, sense of our ability, sense of our efficacy. So, using signature strengths and not just varieties of ways and varieties of life situations, the more you use them in varieties of life situation, the more you are likely to be happier and feel more capable and competent. So, this is also another important thing. Another thing is affirming one's most important values. Affirmation of values are also very important. We all have different kinds of values, which we find personally meaningful, and so affirmation of values means we can reflect on these values. What are the important values in my life, and reflecting on them, and if we more and more incorporate them in our life, the more we likely to become happier. So, affirming values, so many values could be there. People may have spiritual values, religious values. People may have values such as related to their friends and families. They want to they give a lot of values to maintaining those relationships. And it could be somebody may have romantic values, somebody may have values for social skills. So, people may have different kinds of values which they assign a lot of significance and meaning to them. So, if you find something is valuable in your life, you try to incorporate them more and more. Obviously, those values has to be positive in the sense they should facilitate your life, not kind of decrease. So, facilitative values are very important, and the more you incorporate them in your life, the better it is in terms of enhancing your happiness. And the last one is meditation. Obviously, we have looked into meditation in more much more detail in full one lecture while discussing coping strategies. So, meditation and mindfulness, obviously we have seen, is one of the important ways of finding happiness within. So, the best part of meditation or mindfulness exercises are that you can find your source of happiness within yourself without really depending on the outer circumstances. So, basically you learn to tackle your mind in such a way that because inherently there is a joy and happiness within us. It is only thing is our mental disturbances and ruminative thoughts which is creating a lot of suffering. So, if you learn to handle that, joy and happiness automatically flows out of it. So, meditation helps you in that. So, you kind of become happy in your own nature, find that source, and really you do not need much from the outside world. So, in that way meditation is unique in finding happiness and coping with different problems of life. So, all these practices are actually brief, can be self administered. You do not have to really need a professional guidance for this once you understand them, and these are all cost effective, and research shows all these things actually enhances our happiness level sustainably. Now, all these positive activities or intentional activities works, how they work, what is the mechanism by which it works? They work by promoting positive feelings. All of these activities actually they promote positive feelings or emotions, positive thoughts. So, if thoughts and emotions are actually directly connected to each other, positive emotions stimulates positive thoughts stimulates positive emotions. So, they are directly connected to each other. So, positive feelings, positive thoughts and positive behavior. So, if your thoughts and emotions are positive, obviously your behaviors will be in line with that, it cannot be other way. And these activities do not focus on negative and correcting negative thoughts or negative beliefs. So, this disorder and other thing, the focus is not to correct these things, focus is enhancing positive emotions. So, then the negative part automatically is taken care. So, as we have already discussed, stimulating positive emotions, it basically it kind of it kinds of eradicates all the effects of negative emotions in terms of in our body and mind. So, if you work towards those positive emotions, thoughts, negative disorder, pathological feelings will automatically be eradicated, simply because they are kind of counter to each other. A meta-analysis of 51 studies, controlled randomized controlled intervention studies, found that people who engage in positive intentional activities such as thinking gratefully, optimistically and mindfully become significantly happier. So, it is not just 1 or 2 studies, it is a meta-analysis on 51 studies, and all showed that these positive activities actually enhances sustainably our happiness level. Now, let us see what are the factors that affect success of positive activities. So, as I said, it is not just doing some activity, and so some of the important factors that can determine whether it will the benefits of it, to what extent it will benefit somebody. So, there may be many factors to it. So, one of the thing is that what are the characteristics of the activity that you are doing. So, what is the frequency of activity that you are doing. So, one thing is frequency of the activity. Obviously, generally for a lot of positive activities, the research shows at least once in a week if you do, let us say practicing gratitude or this kind of thing, even doing once in a week can show a lot of benefits in terms of doing this kind of activities. So, obviously, for some activities the more you do, it is better. For example, the practice of meditation and other thing, if you do it regularly every day, the impact will be much better. For some activity, even if you do it for once in a week, it shows its effect. And the second important thing is variety. So, doing things in a varieties of ways is very important in terms of enhancing happiness. Simply, if you change or include variety in it, it is the hedonic adaptation is less likely to happen. You are less likely to get adapted to them. So, the same activity you can do in varieties of ways, as I have said, given an example in terms of gratitude, or you can do multiple of other varieties of activities together. You can do not just one activity, you can do many other activities. You can practice gratitude exercises, you can do acts of kindness, you can do meditations, so many other activities actually you can do. So, varieties of activities, again it will reduce the hedonic adaptation. So, certain characteristics like what is the frequency of that activity, are you doing it in a varieties of way or varieties of activities. So, that will also determine whether it is bringing about the positive impact or not. Then the characteristics of the person itself is also very important. As we have said, people differ in their values, in their belief system, in their personality traits, in their motivation, in their efforts. So, all this will determine whether the person will get benefit from it or not. For example, motivation, without motivation you cannot do any intentional activities, because effort is needed in it. So, you need to be motivated to bring changes in your life. So, first you need to have this motivation that I want to increase my emotional experiences of life, then only you will be able to put effort in that direction. You need to believe that it will work, and then once you start doing it, if you see benefit, automatically that belief will be strengthened. And a personality trait, what kind of person you are, also will determine, as we have seen. For extrovert people will may need certain different kinds of activities, introvert may need different kinds of activities. So, all these factors actually may determine whether activity will lead to positive benefit or not. Then obviously, person activity fit, which we have already discussed, it should match the activity and the personal characteristics should match in order to bring out the best benefit out of it. So, we can just draw this positive activity model. What are the factors that does or bring about changes? We can show it in a diagrammatic way. For example, let us see. So, positive activities it brings about increased well-being or happiness. How it brings about this? Let us see some of the factors that can come in between positive activity and in terms of understanding mechanism. So, positive activity what it does? One thing it does that it brings about positive emotions, positive thoughts, positive behavior, and even certain it satisfied certain psychological need also. And these positive changes bring about increased well-being and happiness. So, these are mediators. So, this is the model proposed by Sonja in one of the paper where she discussed how these positive activities brings about changes or increase in happiness. So, one thing is that positive activity brings about these changes and these changes brings about increased well-being or happiness. And there are many moderators or other factors that influence whether positive activity will lead to increased well-being or not. These factors include characteristics of activity itself, whatever activity you are doing, what are the characteristics of that activity. It may include, as I say, what are the frequency, varieties. So, this is kind of one set of factors. Another set of factors is characteristics of the person, which include motivation, efforts, beliefs, personality traits, and whether there is a fit between these two. So, person activity fit, whether they fit with each other, this is also important factors. So, all these factors actually will influence this relationship. So, characteristics of the activity, characteristics of the person and the person activity fit will moderate this relationship, means it will influence whether it will bring about higher happiness or not so higher. And these factors like positive emotions, positive thoughts, positive behaviors, need satisfaction, these are like mechanisms, after doing positive activity, this will induce these things within us and they will ultimately lead to higher well-being and happiness. So, these are called as kind of mediators, and these are called as kind of moderators. So, this is the model that explains how positive activity can bring about increased well-being and happiness, and what are the factors that may influence this relationship. So, mechanisms, if you just look little bit more into this. So, how it brings about changes is that positive activities are positive, they are positive for an individual only to the extent that they stimulate increase in positive emotions, thoughts, behaviors, and they satisfy certain needs, psychological needs. We have certain psychological needs such as need to feel autonomous, need to feel connected with people. So, all this, or need to feel competent. So, all these things actually happens after doing positive activities, and which in turn increases happiness. See, these are some of the possible pathways. Some studies reported positive emotions experienced as a result of, for example, meditation, nurtured personal resources such as social relationship, physical health, which in turn increase life satisfaction. So, for example, research shows, especially research in who looked into the effect of meditation, where it found people who do regular meditation, their positive emotions are higher, and when you experience more positive emotions, your relationships will also be much better and satisfying, and simply because you will be more better connected to people, because it is the destructive emotion that creates conflicts in relationships. If you are having more positive emotions, you will have better relationship with people, which will increase your life satisfaction and happiness. Studies also show that expressing gratitude and optimism increase self-reported autonomy and relatedness, which in turn increase life satisfaction. So, doing certain activities such as gratitude and optimism also fulfill certain psychological needs such as feeling of autonomy. You feel you are not constrained by outside forces, you are doing things on your own. So, those needs are fulfilled. You feel more related to people because you express gratitude towards somebody. You also have a positive then relationship with those people. So, all these basic needs are also fulfilled, which in turn increases your life satisfaction and happiness. So, the specific positive intentional activities we will discuss for enhancing happiness. In the next module, next few modules we will discuss specific activities, and we will discuss more about it. For example, gratitude, we will have one lecture on gratitude. Acts of kindness, we will have one lecture on acts of kindness. We will have maybe about 2 lectures on using signature strengths. So, like this we will discuss specific activities one by one in the upcoming modules. In this module we discussed more about and addressed specifically about can we increase happiness, and research shows despite there are barriers, inherent barriers in our system such as genetic composition, personality trait and hedonic adaptation, there is a significant possibility of enhancing our happiness level, particularly using intentional activities or positive activities. And we will discuss these positive activities in more details specifically in the upcoming lectures. So, with this I end today's lecture here. Thank you.